name at the top? Anybody know how to do that?
Put your cursor over the top right-hand side of your box
Okay.
and click it. You see a blue box with 3 dots?
Nope. Hang on, Matt.
Actually, I don't know if that's working either.
Okay. Because what does it say? Just it said Ted's iPhone?
I just clicked on the wrong thing here. Okay.
On mine, there are 2 boxes at the top when you hover over your little Hollywood square.
Yes.
One says mute and the other has the 3 dots.
Yes. If you click on the 3 dots,
Okay.
You get a drop-down menu.
you
And
get
one
a
of them is
drop-down
rename.
menu, right?
And
And
then
at the bottom it says rename.
Rename.
Are you finding it?
Yep.
Okay. You click on that and it'll let you rename yourself.
Okay.
Representative Terry, do you think we should start? Should we wait a couple more minutes?
You on mute?
Representative Terry?
Sorry about that. Let's give ourselves a couple more minutes. It looks like we're missing quite a few members. Maybe 3 minutes tops.
Okay.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Have we heard that from any committee members who will not be able to be here today?
I have not.
I haven't.
I noticed in reading the model rules last night that committee members are requested to let required to let the committee clerk know if they're not going to be able to make a meeting. So
My apologies. I sent a note to the chairs on Sunday or Monday morning that I wouldn't attend. I forgot to let the clerk know.
yeah, no, and that's usually enough. And the rules haven't been adopted yet, so you are not in violation of them.
I wouldn't want detention or nothing.
Of course.
All right, it looks
Yep.
like we are at 9:05. We should probably get started.
Yeah, we'll get started. We have quorum at this point. So great. Well, welcome everyone to the meeting of the Taxation Committee. I guess we'll start with introductions as we usually do. We'll start with Representative Matlack.
Good morning. I am Ann Matlack. I represent House District 92, which includes the communities of Cushing, Thomaston, South Thomaston, St. George, Matinicus, Creehaven, and the Muscle Ridge Islands.
Welcome, Representative Carmichael.
Good morning. I'm Mickey Carmichael. I represent District 137, and that's 18 communities in Hancock, Washington, and Penobscot counties.
All right. Representative Sachs, you can introduce yourself.
Good morning. My name is Melanie Sachs, and I represent House District 48, which is Freeport and parts of Pownell.
Okay. Senator Daughtry.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Senator Maddie Daughtry, and I represent Senate District 24, which is Brunswick, Freeport, North Yarmouth, and Pownell.
Okay. Senator Pouliot.
Hey, good morning. State Senator Matt Pouliot. I represent Senate District 15, the towns of Augusta, China, Oakland, Sydney, and Vassarboro.
Excellent. And Representative Kryzak, we can't see you, but looks like you're with us maybe.
Yeah, I'm driving. I'm Representative Ted Kryzak. I represent District 20, Acton, Lebanon, and part of Shepley.
Is there any other committee members with us? We got one phone number. It looks like 441 number. I don't know if that's a committee member or not, but you recognize that number, Representative Terry?
I do not.
Okay. So would you like to introduce yourself and then I'll.
Good morning. I'm Representative Mo Terry. I represent District 26, the west side of Gorham, and I serve as House Chair for the Tax Committee. Welcome, everybody.
And I'm Senator Ben Shipman. I represent Senate District 27, which is part of the city of Portland, and serve as the Senate Chair of the Taxation Committee. So I think that's all the committee members that are with us for now. Having introduced themselves, I'd like to also introduce Julie Jones, who's our analyst, and also Avery Page, who's our committee clerk, and helping to host the meeting for us today. I think we'd like to start with the adoption of the committee rules, which was mentioned by our analyst, Julie. Have folks had a chance to look those over? And if so, are there any recommended changes that anybody has to the committee rules? Not seeing anyone indicating any interest in speaking. I do have a couple of small changes I wanted to suggest on page 3, just having to do with under section C, consumption of food and beverages. And these are changes that we, I think, made in the past. Most of the committees I've served on have made changes to that. Under the section about during public hearings, committee members may consume water only. I'd propose changing water to beverages. And then under number 2, during work sessions, committee members may consume food and beverages. So I would propose inserting the words food and before beverages and then crossing out everything after that. And is there any objection to those 2 changes? I'm not seeing any objections. So with those changes and not any other changes being proposed, should we take a vote, or how do we need to do this, Julie? Should we ask if there's no opposition, we just adopt them by unanimous consent? Julie? We can't hear you. Hello?
Give her a sec. She's still on mute.
Okay.
There we go.
Sorry, it takes, I was writing down notes and it takes me a second to get back to my little picture so I can click on the unmute. Sorry about that. Analysts are really not expected to be the experts on rules. If you want to know if there's a rule on something, I can find the rule for you. But in terms of interpreting how it applies or what process you need to use, that's really up to the chair to decide.
Let's just do a show of hands. I mean, we've got committee members here. For those that are in favor of the rules with those 2 changes, can you raise your hand so people can see it on the screen?
I think it's good practice to do this too.
Is there any opposition? Not seeing any opposition, so it looks like that is unanimous. Um,
Representative Kryzak.
Representative Kryzak, are you
You said-
opposed?
Nope, you said to raise hand, so I raised my hand.
Ah,
You're in support then. Okay, great. So we are unanimous. Great. I just wanted to make another announcement, I guess, just in general, that we're all kind of, some of us are new to Zoom and we're doing things differently this way for our committee work. So for members of the public that are watching, just please bear with us. We're probably going to make a few mistakes along the way, but we'll do the best we can. Committee members that would like to speak, please voice your concerns and questions through the chair, either using the emotion option on the Zoom screen to raise your hand, or raising your hand on the screen so folks can see it. And we'll try to call on everybody in the order that hands are raised. So I think that's everything that I wanted to announce. So we might as well start with our agenda.
Hey, Senator, I'm sorry to interrupt. Could
Sure.
we have 2 new members joining us? Think
Oh.
we can have them introduce
Sure.
themselves?
Sure.
Representative Bickford?
Bruce Bickford, District 63, which is part of Auburn.
Excellent. And Representative Perry?
Good morning. I'm Joe Perry. I represent House District 124, which is part of Bangor and part of Orono.
Awesome. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. So we'll start with, I guess we wanted to have just a brief rundown on what tax conformity is, and we have someone here to do that from MRS or DAFs.
Yes, good morning, Senator Chipman, Representative Terry, and members of the Joint Standing Committee on Taxation. I'm John Sagasser, Tax Policy Counsel for the Office of Tax Policy at Maine Revenue Services. Just to check, can you all hear me fine?
Yep, I think so.
Okay, great. To assist the committee in your consideration of the Supplemental Appropriations Bill and Change Package, we thought it might be useful to pause and briefly review the basic structure of Maine's income tax law and just how conformity or non-conformity with federal income tax law is framed in Title 36 of the Maine revised statutes and addressed by the legislature each year. So like many states, Maine's income tax law uses the Federal Internal Revenue Code to provide an efficient starting point for taxpayers to calculate Maine income tax liability and tax benefits. For individual income tax, that starting point is the calculation at the federal level of federal adjusted gross income. And for corporate income tax, that starting point at the federal level is federal taxable income. A starting point for Maine tax, pulling that number in calculation. Maine's tax provisions are linked to the code, the Internal Revenue Code, as of a certain date, an approach taken by many other states and is commonly referred to as static conformity. Static in that conformity is as of a specific date enacted by the legislature, and that therefore does not change until a new date is enacted. Maine takes this approach in particular in order to avoid the prohibition in the Maine Constitution against the delegation of the legislature's taxing power. The current code conformity date listed in Title 36 is December 31st, 2019. A number of other states in the country take what's called a rolling conformity approach to their linkage to the Internal Revenue Code, with the link to federal law automatically updating at the time of any federal changes. As I said, Maine is a static state, although as an aside, there are a few provisions, limited number of provisions in Title 36 where the legislature has provided a rolling conformity treatment. And those are more technical or isolated pieces. The current code conformity date of December 31st, 2019 was adopted by the 129th legislature. And again, that's December 31st, 2019. Obviously, since December 31st, 2019, the federal government has enacted 3 major coronavirus relief laws. that contain federal tax provisions with main income tax implications. These federal changes affect various tax years. Note that conformity thus entails simple date change in Title 36 for the definition of code and an application provision for the applicable tax year. Nonconformity, also called decoupling from the federal law changes, entails legislative amendment to Title 36 for a specified modification to the FAGI, Federal Adjusted Gross Income, and Federal Taxable Income starting points in the main tax liability calculation. So in the actual legislative documents that you see, there'll be the date conformity element. And then for nonconformity, there are provisions through what are called addition modifications and sometimes subtraction modifications. And you'll see the structure set out where typically it applies both to the personal income tax provision and to the corporate income tax provision. In the supplemental budget bill before you, the basic step of date conformity to the Federal Internal Revenue Code is set forth in Part B. The second step is to address modifications to that conformity, which are set out in the separate tax parts of the supplemental budget bill and change package outlined yesterday, in which Staff Attorney of the Office of Tax Policy, Daniel D'Alessandro, is ready to run through part by part with you later if the committee would like. The fiscal estimate for the administration's overall conformity provisions, including the specific nonconformity elements, is principally tied to this code date provision in Part B, with the fiscal effect of the nonconformity proposals and the other tax parts of the bill built into that fiscal estimate. So that sets out the three basic building blocks for Maine's income tax law and conformity. The current code conformity date listed in Title 36. Second, federal tax law changes occurring after that current code conformity date. And third, the administration's legislative proposal and this legislature's consideration of updating that code conformity date to include those subsequent federal law changes and decide the manner and extent of conformity and nonconformity. Finally, I'd like to just add a fourth background piece to keep in mind, which is the tax forms and instructions. Maine Revenue Services must prepare in advance of each tax filing season these forms and instructions. For the current return filing season, tax forms were developed over the fall by Maine Revenue Services and then implemented by electronic filing providers and sent to printers at the end of 2020. Maine Revenue Services prepared the forms at the governor's direction to reflect the supplemental budget proposal, while reserving blank lines to allow for modifications to that proposal by the legislature or otherwise. That concludes my overview. I hope that the framework proves useful as you consider the supplemental budget proposal. And I should note the likelihood of further federal legislation, coronavirus relief legislation that has tax impact, that would bring additional conformity issues for the legislature to consider. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about the overall conformity framework, or moving on to what's before you now. I can turn it over to Julie, who I believe will give you an overview of the supplemental budget bill and change package. And then, as I said, Daniel D'Alessandro, staff attorney in the Office of Tax Policy, who can run through the parts part by part, answer your questions on that. Great. And Dr. Allen is, of course, here to provide further overall comment and address questions about fiscal elements. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Sagasser. Is there any questions from members of the committee? I guess I just wanted to ask, is generally speaking conformity the way in which Maine does or doesn't align with federal tax laws? Is that sort of a more simple way of explaining it?
Yes, the idea of conformity in the overall sense is what is the linkage to the federal tax law, and to what extent, where is it in line, and when are there departures?
Right. So what's deductible and what's exempted and what isn't, you know, those type of things for figuring out what's taxable and what isn't in terms of how Maine aligns with the federal government's requirements is what conformity essentially is.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great. So I don't see any questions from committee members, so thank you very much for that, that presentation. We
Okay, you're welcome.
really appreciate it. So I guess we'll now turn things over to Julie to go through the next section for us.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to say I really appreciated Senator Chipman's note at the beginning that our familiarity with the Zoom process and this new electronic world that we're living in varies immensely. Some of us have a lot of experience with it, and some of us have no experience with it. I'm probably somewhere in the middle with a little bit of experience. So I may stumble with things as I'm getting used to doing all of this, and I ask for your patience. And I hope all of you will also have patience for yourself if you feel like you're stumbling through some of it too, and ask those of us who may have a little bit more information to provide assistance. I also wanted to indicate one of the things that I learned yesterday. I'm trying to learn at least one new thing a day about Zoom, but the thing that I learned yesterday is that it's the version of Zoom that people have varies. So that means that if you have a question, the answer to your question may vary. For instance, yesterday I wanted to raise my hand, and the way I had learned to do it was no longer available to me. What I learned yesterday was that I had updated my Zoom and there was now a different way to do it. So if you're asking a question about how do I raise my hand electronically, so a little hand appears on the screen, the answer to that may depend upon the version that you have. I think it's probably a good idea when you click to leave the meeting, you may notice that a box might show up that says there are updates. Do you want to update? I think I've discovered that it's probably a good idea to click yes on that in order to try to keep everybody at the same point of the most updated version. So I'm recommending that when you leave. It doesn't take very long to do the update. It's not something you have to wait 3 or 4 minutes for. It goes real quickly. At least it did when I did it yesterday. So I'm recommending that to hopefully avoid some of those issues. But that's part of what this experience is going to be like for all of us. So what I'd like to do to get to the budget right now is I sent you out a chart that, I don't know if you can see it, but holding up things doesn't seem to work too well. But the chart is kind of an overview of each portion of the budget bill that you heard yesterday in the Appropriations Committee. But instead of actually using that chart, I think what I want to do, if it's okay, is to share the actual text of the budget provisions and just sort of walk through those. So is it okay if if I share that?
Yeah, that would be great. I think that would be really helpful because some of us may or may not be able to find it in our email and
Right.
see it and still be on the Zoom meeting at the same time. So if you could share it so that we could see it on the Zoom screen, that would be great.
Yes, and before I do that, I'll just mention all of the materials that are being shared or mentioned are available on the Taxation Committee website under materials, and we've got a separate category there for budget. So the budget materials are there. Hopefully they're labeled in a way that's useful enough. But for right now, I'm going to go through this, and because I haven't done it too much, I'm going to have to kind of walk myself through it. Budget provisions are, why aren't they showing up? Over here. Why am I not doing this? Oh, I know. I need to go back. For some reason I'm not able to get my screen back here. Everybody's pictures on it. Oh, wait a second. Okay.
Julie, what I'm looking at, the chart that you sent out, it's got at the top provisions in the supplemental budget. And it looks like it's essentially the same information as what's on our Zoom screen, but it's just looks a little bit different. Is that?
Are you seeing it on your Zoom screen? Because
Oh,
I'm not
yeah.
seeing it on mine. I seem to have lost my connection somehow
Yeah.
or other with the
Yeah, we've got a
video.
document that says Administrative and Financial Services Department of at the top, Maine Board of Tax Appeals. So we're seeing that on the Zoom screen. But for those who got the chart on our email, we should have all got that from Julie yesterday. It says provisions in the supplemental at 12621 at the top, and I've got that on my other computer here from the email you sent.
Yep, I just
Looks like
realized
it's
where
the same
things went.
information. I think
I'm
it's the
using-
same information, but it's just looks a little bit different from what's on the Zoom screen versus what was sent out, the chart that was sent out.
Yes, and what I neglected to remember is that I have two screens here, as people mentioned yesterday. So it's possible to have the screen on my laptop, which is what I'm looking at this on, and the budget provision showed up instead on the on my other screen, and I didn't notice. Okay, so I'm not in. Are you seeing the full page?
It goes from Administrative and Financial Services Department of, and it goes all the way down to Summary General Fund, All Other, which is underneath Office of the Commissioner. So there's like an X over it that looks like you drew with a pencil or a pen. So we can see it's down to that section. It doesn't look like the full page. It's just the top half maybe.
Right, but does it go all the way over to the right-hand side where you see the numbers?
Yeah, we can see all the numbers and everything. We
Okay.
can see the left and right side of the page. We just could only see like the top half of it probably.
Okay, good. If something goes wrong with the picture, let me know. So what you're looking at right now is the part A of the budget, which includes the appropriations and allocations. For those of you who are new to the budget process, appropriations is a term that we use to refer to money that the legislature authorizes to be spent from the general fund. Allocations are things that is money that is provided from other funds. So you'll see the general fund things here at the beginning are appropriations. So when I refer to appropriations, those are from the general fund. When I refer to allocations, they're from other funds. And I'll point it out when we get to one of those further on. The first item on here is for the Maine Board of Tax Appeals. And most of these in Part A are provisions which are to bring the appropriations into line with what the actual projected operating expenses are. So they're not cuts to services in any way. They are reflections that the administration has gone through the amounts that have been appropriated in the budget previously. There are amounts that they can be identified as not needed this year for the remainder of FY21. So that's the Maine Board of Tax Appeals. That they've looked at the budget for that board and determined that they've got $20,000 that they don't need. The parentheses means a cut when you're talking about appropriations and allocations. But that's what that one is. Are there questions? I'm not hearing anything.
Yeah, it doesn't look like there's any questions.
Then I'm, for some reason, not seeing your pictures when I'm in this view, but.
I just have a quick question, Julie. So we're today just reviewing this, but we're not taking any votes on any of this. We're just going through it. Is that okay? Is that true?
Oh, well, thank you for mentioning that. That's up to you how you want to do it, whether you want to take the votes now. It speeds things up if you do it that way and don't have to come back to it later. But if you're not ready to do it now, it's up to you what process you want to use.
Well, Representative Terry, what do you think? I mean, it seems like it might make sense to vote section by section on these. I mean, there may be some we want to discuss more and not vote on today, but some of the ones where there's no concerns at all and everybody's fine with it, maybe we could take a vote.
I agree with that. I think that if we can get whatever we can get through, in agreement, I think that would be great. And then if there's anything else we need to jump into, we can do that. I think that if we maybe take these in parts. If there's no, if there's no discussion, we can take them in, whole entire parts rather than piece by piece in each part. Does that make sense?
I need to raise my hand, although I don't.
Yeah, go ahead, Julie.
Aren't available to do it anymore. I forgot to mention at the beginning that the Appropriations Committee has asked for you to report on each one of these sections in Part A individually. So they don't want to just know for all of Part A. They want to know for each part.
For each one. Okay. Well, that answers our.
I mean, what I would suggest is that we, go, as Julie explained, each section, like she just did on this first one, we just ask, is there any opposition? Is everybody okay with this? And if there isn't any opposition, we declare that to be a unanimous vote and we'd go to the next one. And when we get to sections where there's concern, certainly like the issue that, has been raised over the last day since yesterday about conformity for the PPP loans. I mean, something like that, I'd say we would set that aside and not vote today so we can have further discussion because that's more complex and there's concerns and, maybe we can get to something unanimous on that. But on some of these other ones, like the one we just talked about, where there I wouldn't think be any concerns, I would say we vote and, try to get each piece voted on as we go through it so we can save some time later.
Yep, sounds good.
So with that, I mean, we just heard from Julie on this section. Nobody had any concerns. Is there anybody have any opposition to this, or are we all okay with it? Let's see. I can't see everybody on my screen because we're sharing this document, but does anybody have any concerns? Doesn't seem like we do. So we will.
Senator Pouliot.
Senator
says
Pouliot.
okay.
You're okay, Senator Pouliot? Okay.
Yeah.
Great. So we're all okay with that. So that we're unanimous on that first one.
So Avery, you want to take that as a vote? Is that okay with you?
Yeah, can we do that one more time? Can we do the physical show of hands button? Does that work?
Yes.
Yeah. So all right. So then we'll take a vote with the physical show of hands, like raising our hands on the screen. Is that what you're asking, Avery?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So we're not going to
That
use
would be
the
great.
actions at the bottom. Just if all those in favor of the first section Julie just reviewed under Maine Board of Appeals, Tax Appeals, please raise your hand physically, not with the reactions at the bottom, but physically on the screen. Raise
Or
your
I
hand.
mean, I could see either one really, so that's fine.
Let's try to keep it consistent. I think the hands, what you had asked for is what we should
Sure.
do.
So you want the reactions at the bottom?
Yeah, if you click on the reactions link
All right.
and just raise your hand. Yeah, perfect.
Okay, great.
Representative Hanley?
Okay.
So everybody's voted?
Yeah, I think I see everyone. Quick question. Do we know who the phone number is tuning in? 207-441-5010.
I don't know. who that is.
If
Yeah.
you could just rename, just so we know who you are tuning in. Okay. All right. I'm all set on my end, though. Thank you.
All right,
Great.
great. So we'll continue on with the next section.
I should also mention that, John Sagasser mentioned it at the end of his presentation as well, that the folks from DAFs and Maine Revenue Services are also joined in the meeting and are able to answer any of your questions in details, if you have detailed questions. So I'm doing the overview, but if you got questions, they're going to know much more. They're going to have much more information in order to be able to answer them.
Okay, just I should mention also, now that we voted, folks got to go in and lower their hands. So folks that still have their hands up can go in and do that. We can go to the next section. Great. thank you.
The next portion under Part A says mandate Betty reimburse municipalities. As you may recall from our discussion last week about the constitutional provisions, there's a provision in the Maine Constitution which says that if the legislature requires municipalities to engage in an activity which is going to cost them money after a certain date, that it is required to reimburse municipalities or adopt it by a 2/3 vote. This provision came into line when the Betty program was adopted, when we moved from the Better program, which was a reimbursement program where we paid businesses, reimbursed businesses for the amount of property tax they were paying to municipalities. Instead, we changed to a property tax exemption, so the business did not have to pay the property taxes. Part of that process is to cover the costs of municipalities in processing the exemptions for municipalities. This portion does not reimburse them for the revenue loss that they have as a result of the exemption. That's covered in a different manner. But it does reimburse them for a portion of their administrative costs in processing when a business applies for an exemption under the Betty program, and maintaining that list and providing information to the state in order for the state to be able to reimburse them correctly. It's not a large appropriation in general, but they've identified that they can reduce their general fund appropriation for the mandate reimbursement by $1,910 in FY21.
All right, is there any questions about this section? Anybody have any concerns? All those in favor, please raise your hand using the reactions button at the bottom of your screen.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
The conformity language, is that going to be a separate part that we're going to vote on?
Yeah, we
Yes.
haven't got to that yet. So we
Okay,
will
I
get
just
to
want
it.
to make sure what we're voting on now has nothing to do with the conformity. Is that correct?
Yeah, all we're doing is voting on separate sections. This is the mandate, the Betty mandate reimbursement municipalities section, section 2 that's on the first page. So yeah, I mean, we're voting on each section one by one, and then when we get to a section like that, like the one that you just referenced, where obviously people are going to have different opinions about it, I'm suggesting that we maybe set that aside and continue going through the document, and then we can come back to that and spend some more time on it, maybe Thursday or another day.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Senator Daughtry.
Thank you. And our votes on these line items are just like straw votes technically, right, for the report back? They're not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are votes that the Appropriations Committee wants us to take on each section for our report back.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions from anybody? I can't see everybody on my screen, so I guess just speak up verbally if you have any questions, but if not, it looks like we're taking a vote. And does our clerk have this vote recorded now?
Can I get a response from Rep. Carmichael? Okay. Rep. Perry?
Representative Perry still with us? I see him. He's not taking. Okay, yep, we got a vote from him.
Okay. Rep. Kryzak?
Representative Kryzak, can you vote?
I vote yes.
Okay. Are you not in front of your computer, Representative Kryzak?
He's not.
No, I'm driving.
Okay, well, just speak up verbally. That's fine. We got your vote as a yes on that.
Okay,
So is that
great.
everybody that you got
Yep.
that recorded? Okay, great.
Yep.
We can lower our hands now. We'll go to the next section.
The next section is the appropriations for the Bureau of Revenue Services, which we usually refer to as main revenue services. It can be referred to either way according to the statutes. This in the full budget bill, which you'll see later when you hear that with Appropriations Committee, has a lot of different lines in it relating to the activities of main revenue services in order to fund all of their activities. In going through those lines, they have identified 4 different areas, initiatives where they are able to reduce their funding. And I'm sure that they will be able to, actually, maybe I should turn this over. It might be better for Jerome Gerard or whoever is going to speak to this item to go through and tell you exactly what each of these is. I can read you the language, the words that are there, but in terms of giving you an explanation, perhaps someone from Maine Revenue Services can do that. Are they ready?
Sure.
That's-
Jerome Gerard.
Thank you.
The overall reduction is because we're in the process of a $50 million computer system project. And these costs before we got funding were being run through our all other budget. And once we got financing through a certificate of participation for the project, we used all other funds. And now that financing is available, these costs like project managers can now be paid through the certificate of participation. And you'll see that not only do we have this reduction of 1.7 million in 2021, it's also in 22 and 23. So it's a overall savings of a little over $5 million for the 3-year period. The expenses primarily are project management services, folks that's helped us over the last 3 years do the due diligence to prepare us to go out with a request for proposal, along with contract with a firm named Fast Enterprises to install the system. The other costs that were incurred were related to temporary service folks that helped us clean the data on our old system to prepare to transfer that data to the new system. We also had to do interface work. Our new computer system will tie directly to the state's host accounting system, the Advantage system. So all transactions that are occurring on our system will also tie to the host accounting system, and all transactions will be simultaneous. So we have about 103 interfaces that we had to map for the vendor, and which took up a tremendous amount of work. But anyway, that's generally what these monies were used for.
Great, thank you, Mr. Gerard. Julie, could you scroll down, because we're not able to see the section that we're talking about right now.
You're not seeing it right now. It's the Revenue Services Bureau of at the top.
No, all we're seeing is Office of the Commissioner. It's at the bottom. It's X'd out, Office of the Commissioner. So we've got to scroll down to Bureau, Revenue Services Bureau of.
Well, tell me if you're starting to see it. Are you seeing it move at all?
Nope, hasn't moved at all.
Okay. Not sure why that is happening, but let me try one thing here. Is it moving now?
Nope, it hasn't moved at all.
Okay, I'm going to try one more thing here. I'm going to close the document and open it back up again. Okay, share screen.
While we're waiting, Representative Sachs, did you have something to say?
Clarifying question for Mr. Gerard, if I could, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Gerard, for being here this morning. As I try to navigate as a new representative through the labyrinth of state budgets, I wondered, you said that this is now, they're able to be taken out of this portion of the budget because it's now being paid through what's called a certificate of participation, different financing from the sounds of it. So is that reflected someplace else in the budget? It's being taken out of this section. Are those costs being reflected someplace else?
The certificate of participation is accounted for completely separately. And essentially, we were financed through Huntington Bank for $46.4 million. It goes into a state fund, and the expenses are charged against the funding that it is within that fund. So I don't know how it's accounted for budgetary purposes, but there's no expenditure or any revenue associated with this the new biennial budget. And what will happen is there's a section K here where we try to change the term from a payout of 7 years to 10 years. The interest rates are incredibly low, and the administration thought it would be a good idea to try to take advantage of extending the payback. When the project is done in 4 years, we will have exhausted the $46.4 million. And then in the subsequent year, we start making payments. And that's when you'll start seeing in our budget, a payment for so many millions of dollars for 7 or possibly 10 years. But between now and then, the COP is in a completely separate fund that I'm not sure if it's included as part of the standard budget process.
Okay, and so perhaps others can help me. So after 4 years, there will come into the budget a line item that says debt service or something along, like I see debt retirement here.
Exactly.
In this current one, it'll be something like debt service
Correct.
or retirement. Okay.
Correct.
Thank
Senator
you.
Poole.
That's helpful.
Great. Senator Pouliot, do you have a question? Senator Pouliot? I guess he just left his hand up. So seeing no other questions, I guess we're going to wait for Julie to get this back up on the screen for us.
Do you have, I have attempted to share the screen again and it looks okay from my end. Can you see
Yeah,
the
we're
budget
not seeing
provisions?
anything on the shared screen. There's nothing, there's no shared screen for us.
I don't. I'm in a meeting. One more time.
I guess while we're waiting, we could welcome Representative Collins. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Good morning. I'm Representative Benjamin Collins. I serve House District 42, which is part of the city of Portland. Thank you.
I believe Representative Hanley joined us since introductions. We'd like to introduce yourself.
Yes, good morning. I'm Jeff Hanley. I represent Pittston. and town of Randolph, Westcasset, and Alna. Thank you.
Representative Gramlich, would you like to introduce yourself?
Good morning. Thank you, Senator Chipman. I am Lori Gramlich. I represent House District 13, which is the lovely seaside community of Old Orchard Beach.
Excellent. Great. So it looks like we got the screen straightened out, Julie. We can see Revenue Services Bureau up now at the top.
Thank you. I apologize for I'm not sure. I clicked on something wrong somewhere along the way and I had to go out and come back in again. I'm glad that it has returned. The one that the Revenue Services Bureau are the ones that we just talked about that Mr. Gerard spoke to. I'm going to move down.
I think
now.
we need to take a vote on that, or did we already vote on that? I don't think we did.
I think you did.
We have not voted on that yet.
So the Bureau of Revenue Services, can you bring that back, Julie? Great.
Yes.
So we're now at the top of the screen, Revenue Services Bureau of, so that section 0002 we just discussed, and we didn't look like we had any other questions from anybody. So are we ready to vote? If everybody could please.
Mr. Chair?
Yep, sure. Representative Carmichael?
Yes. I just got a quick question on the computer upgrade. He said that this is going to be financed over the next 10 years, possibly. Did I understand that correctly?
Mr. Gerard?
Yes, the term currently is we have like 3 years before we start making payment at a minimum. And then we'd have currently under statute 7 years to pay back the loan. So the total term is about 10 years currently. The statutory, not statutory, but the change request under K is asking for authority to, instead of having a 7-year term for payback, to extend it to 10 years.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'm wondering if we could just go look at K, since the two are entwined. I think this is just important for the public because it looks like we're saving lots of money, which is great. I love a good low interest rate, but I do think we need to make sure the public understands in full transparency that while this does look like a big cut, we will eventually be needing to pay some of these pieces back.
Sure. No, that sounds good. It looks like Julie's scrolling down now to find section. Here's Part K. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And then there's a summary. It says we can extend the time to repay the financial agreements authorized. So is there any additional questions or discussion from the committee? Seeing none, I guess we're ready to vote. If all those in support of this section, please vote with the reactions at the bottom of the screen, raising your hand. Do you have that, everybody's vote, Avery?
Waiting on Senator Pouliot. And Rep. Kryzak.
Representative Kryzak, if you're with us on the phone, could you indicate if you'd like to support this section?
Yes.
So Representative Kryzak is a yes. And Senator Pouliot, we need a vote from you. Senator Pouliot.
He may have stepped out. He did.
So
He stepped out.
He stepped out. So should we not wait for his vote and
No, we're
mark
good.
him down as not
Oh,
here?
got it. Got it.
Oh,
You got it. Okay, great.
All right. All set.
Great. So everybody voted, so we can lower our hands now. We'll go on to the next section.
The next section and the one after it relate to the provision in the Maine Constitution which requires the legislature to reimburse municipalities for property tax revenue loss as a result of property tax exemptions enacted after 1979. The first one of these is for snow grooming equipment. There is a provision in law which provides a property tax exemption for certain snow grooming equipment that's registered with the Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife. If I recall correctly, these are things that are used generally for maintenance of publicly accessible snow grooming trails. And the reimbursement is the amount appropriated for reimbursement is reduced by $3,000 in this bill. It says it's related to financial order. I don't even know how to read those numbers, but related to a financial order, and I'm not sure what that means. I don't know if anyone, I know Mr. Lacey is here for Maine Revenue Services. He's the head of the property tax division and might be the person to explain it, or maybe somebody else if there are more questions. So I assume that the funding is not needed since it's constitutionally required reimbursement.
So are we get ready to discuss this item? Any committee discussion or questions?
Mr. Lacey's here you could ask him. Mr. Lacey looks like he's available to answer the question.
Yeah, Mr. Lacey would like to.
Yeah, so this, thank you, Senator Chipman, Representative Perry. Yeah, so the reduction here is just to reflect the actual expenditures that are expected based on this exemption. So,
and could you tell us, Julie made reference to this being constitutionally required. Is there something in the Constitution that requires this?
Correct. So there's a provision in the Maine Constitution that states that any property tax exemptions that are passed by the legislature after, I believe it's 1978, the state is required to reimburse the municipalities for at least 50% of the revenue loss associated with that exemption. So there's a series of these. The snow grooming one happens to be one of them, but there's a series of these exemptions that the state's required to reimburse municipalities for. So
okay.
It varies year to year depending on who's applying. And so this $3,000 represents a reduction based on the actual applications that came in this year.
Okay. So just so we're clear, there's nothing in the Constitution specific to snow grooming property, but it's the requirement that the reimbursement happen anything of after a certain date, which I think a lot of us are aware of that. Who've been on taxation before, but okay. So
correct. The exemption itself is statutory.
Right.
The reimbursement is constitutional.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, may I ask Mr. Lacey a quick question? This is Representative Sachs.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you so much. Mr. Lacey, and this I guess would be for, as I think about it, for the Betty program, for the snow grooming, and I see there's one for waste facility coming up. What is the date that because I think it'd be hard to gauge whether a program is being utilized. Of course, you can look at past reimbursements from past tax years and then and forecast what you believe is going to be, which is normal budgeting. But what was the date that you utilized to know that sort of benchmarking?
So all of the reimbursements are made via what we call the municipal valuation return, which is filed every year with us in the fall. Mm-hmm. And so the reimbursements for the reimbursements go out at different times, but generally by late fall, we know what reimbursements we need to send out for that year.
That is super helpful. Thank you.
Any additional questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, I guess we will now vote on this section. Is that what the next thing we want to do is take a vote? So all those in favor Please vote with the reactions button at the bottom of your screen.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I vote yes.
great. Representative Kryzak votes yes.
Mr. Chair, for the public, I'm assuming that they can't see us raising our hand, and I'm wondering if at the end of every vote, you can say it was a unanimous vote, just so my constituents know what I'm voting on and what I'm not.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
you.
we'll do that. Have you got all the votes recorded, Avery?
I need Rep. Carmichael. Okay.
He's raising his hand. And is that everybody?
Yep.
Okay. So it looks like that is unanimous of members present. So we'll now go down to waste facility tax reimbursement.
This is one of my more favorite provisions, which recalls some old memories from previous years in staffing the taxation committee. The name that it's used in the budget is somewhat shortened and less descriptive than what the exemption actually is. The exemption in statute that's being referred to here is an animal waste storage facility. And it's defined as a structure or pit constructed and used solely for storing manure, animal bedding waste, or other waste generated by animal production. So you can see it's quite limited in terms of the application of this property tax exemption. It was referred to at the time the bill was being considered as the new manure pit bill. I don't know what a manure pit is, although I think somebody explained it to me at the time. I guess it pretty much explains itself. Anyway, this is like the snowmobile grooming. This is reimbursement because it was enacted in 1999 after the constitutional requirement. And again, it's related to the financial order. And again, I defer to Mr. Lacey if you want more information about why it's not needed. It's $1,219 that's being deappropriated from this line.
Is he with us today?
He just spoke to you about the snowmobile.
Yep. So could he speak to this?
Yeah, certainly. So as with the snow grooming equipment, this is another one of the constitutional reimbursements that's required, and we're reducing it by the $1,200 to reflect the actual expenditures that we anticipate. So as with the snow grooming one, it varies every year depending on which taxpayers are applying and which municipalities are requesting reimbursement.
Okay, is there any questions or discussion from the committee? Seeing none, are we ready to vote? Could please, members, please vote by using the reactions button at the bottom of your screen. Representative Carmichael is a yes. Anybody else who has not yet voted? You have everybody's vote, Avery?
Yep.
Okay. So that vote is unanimous of all members present. So if you could scroll down, Julie, we can't see anything else after waste facility tax reimbursement.
Actually, what I'm going to do is, for some reason, when I put this document together, there are some provisions that are in Part A that were separate from the others because they are not related to main revenue services. But they are related to revenue sharing, which is under the jurisdiction of this committee. Revenue sharing is in the budget listed under the Department of the Treasury because they are the ones that operate the formula for distribution of the revenues to municipalities, and they're the ones that actually make the payments. So they got attached at the end of the total documents, but I think where they're part Part A that they should probably be discussed at this point as well. There are changes being made with regard to revenue sharing. You'll see there's the second one on the screen here is state municipal revenue sharing. They're listed alphabetically, which is a little awkward because state municipal revenue sharing is what we frequently refer to as revenue sharing 1, the regular formula for distribution of revenue sharing. The disproportionate tax burden fund is what we usually refer to as revenue sharing 2, which are the amount of the portion of the local government fund that goes to municipalities with mill rates that exceed 10 mills. As you can see in both of these instances, these are not general fund. They are not appropriations. They are allocations from other special revenue funds, which is a generic term we use to refer to basically any funds that are not the general fund or the highway fund. The other special revenue funds in this instance refer to the local government fund, which receives all revenue sharing money when it's coming out of income tax and sales tax. And then it gets divided up. Some of it goes from the local government fund to the disproportionate tax burden fund, the revenue sharing 2 fund. So the disproportionate tax burden fund is the revenue sharing 2 fund. What this bill is doing is allocating an additional $1.96 million to that fund. Under the revenue sharing 1 fund, the second one on the list, it is deallocating $20.19 million. The descriptions of these indicate that there are 2 just a second here, that there are changes requested that are requested to correct a calculation error in the original biennial budget bill. Maine Revenue Services usually speaks for the Treasurer's Office on behalf of revenue sharing issues. I'm not sure if Mike Allen or someone else from Maine Revenue Services can say what the error was originally and why this correction is needed. But I'll defer to them.
I wish I could help you on this, but I don't know what the correction, what the problem was that needed to be corrected.
Senator Daughtry.
Thank you. Is this the portion that we received testimony from the Maine Municipal Association in regards to? Just to clarify. Anyone know that one?
Is there someone who knows whether we received testimony from MMA on this?
I'm looking for my MMA testimony right now, so I can hopefully.
It just came in last night. Honestly, I haven't had a chance to even read it yet.
The communication from them was positive, but it didn't specifically mention the exact line. Obviously, being new to taxation, I just wanted to make sure that was the portion that they were referring to.
So they were okay with this?
Yeah, if this is the portion of the supplemental that they were referring to, they were okay in their testimony with it.
Okay.
But I just
Representative Collins, do you have a question? Okay.
Well, and is this and I'm also looking at the chart, Julie, that you had, that the original figure was 20+ million, but now it's been changed to correct the calculation error, which is 10.9. So this isn't actually the number anymore.
Thank you. Yes, I forgot. Should have been looking at my chart. The numbers are changed in the change package so that the amount being deallocated for state municipal revenue sharing is now 10.9 million rather than the 20.2 million in what you're looking at right now. And the revenue sharing 2 portion, the disproportionate share, is increased 4.3 million rather than 1.96 million in the change package.
Any additional questions from members of the committee?
Well, Mr. Chair, I'm wondering if perhaps we can table this one until Thursday. And the reason I'm saying that is I'd like to determine the MMA's memo. I didn't actually even, I looked and I actually didn't see that I had it, as well as Representative Martin yesterday from Appropriations was talking about getting a number from Revenue Services if that number were boosted up to 4% as opposed to 3.75. And I'd love to see that additional information as well.
Yeah, I think that's fine. We can set this aside so we can get some more information about it. So we will do that.
If that works for everybody else, I'm not looking to add on.
Well,
there are just some pieces here that were important.
I think the idea today is to just to run through everything, and if there's any concerns or issues with any of the sections, we would set those aside for further discussion, and then if there isn't, we would take a vote, and vote on the ones that we can, where everybody's on the same page.
And I believe once a member has tabled something, it's tabled.
Okay, I was just sorry about that. Didn't mean to make it automatic, but
no, that's okay. That's all right.
Gentle request. Thank
Yeah,
you, Madam
I don't think we need to take a formal vote to table it. I think we can just set it aside, and move on, and then we can come back to these, at another time, maybe on Thursday. So we'll do that. So we'll now go to the next section, state municipal revenue sharing.
I know you, oh, okay.
You have a couple of questions first.
You have additional questions? I didn't see them. Representative Hanley, do you have a question?
Yes, point of order. I believe a tabling can't be discussed, but it still needs a vote.
Well, we can do that. I mean, I didn't see an issue with just setting it aside, but if we want to have a formal tabling, so we've got a tabling motion from Representative Sachs. Is there a second?
Yeah. And I second that motion.
Seconded by Representative Hanley. All those in favor of tabling the disproportionate tax burden fund, please signify by raising your hand using the reaction section at the bottom of your screen. All now voted. I think everybody's voted. Representative Carmichael voted.
Oh, okay. All right.
Great. So we will now that the item is tabled. So we'll now go to state municipal revenue sharing.
For me, Mr. Chair, this was, and this is not a motion, but this was part of the same. If you look at Julie's chart, these three pieces around the state municipal revenue sharing disproportionate tax burden, they're all, and the rate of revenue sharing is all part of that same discussion item. And part of the change package as well.
Correct. I think Julie just broke that up for us so we could see what it looked like.
Do people have questions or their hands still up from the vote? Is that Bickford? Do you have a question?
I have a question.
Sure.
Not a question, but I'm just going to make a motion to table.
You're making a motion to table state municipal revenue sharing?
Yes, that's what she wanted. So let's just do it.
But I mean, should we let Julie explain it, at least please go through it with us before we table it, or do you want to just table it without any discussion or any explanation?
She just explained it.
Okay.
Yeah, I was talking about both of them at the same time since they're both revenue sharing items.
Okay. Great. So
I do have a question, however. I'm not sure what the point to ask it is. I know you have a motion to table and you can't debate it, but I do have a question about part of the motion.
Okay.
Relating to Representative Martin's request yesterday, which I did not quite understand when he was making it, of what currently revenue sharing, the local government fund receives in FY21 3.75% of the sales and income tax revenue sharing base. I'm not sure if he was suggested, I'm not sure if what he was asking was how much it would be for FY21 if we had 4%, which would require going back to like last July 1st in order to retroactively up the amount of money from 3.75 to 4%. At this point, in order to have it be 4% total, so I guess there'd be like a big check that municipalities would get sometime in the spring to reflect, once this takes effect, to reflect the fact that it had gone up to 4% rather than 3.75. Revenue sharing is scheduled on July 1st this year without any changes to statute to return to the original 5%. So it wouldn't be for the next fiscal year, I assume. I'm not sure what his question, I'm not sure I understood what his question was. I thought perhaps some of you may have understood it better than I.
Well, and I think that's what I wanted clarification on, Julie, is because what felt like the intent of his question was if municipalities based on sales revenue were going to be significantly curtailed because of the lack of sales revenue. Although we had one of my questions, which I was going to go back a little bit to say is I understand they were actually more robust than we thought. And it sounded as though Representative Martin, we're trying to find a way to correct for that, to figure out how it is that we can continue to support municipalities within the existing framework. But I'm happy to reach out to him to see what his intent was and if he's gotten any information, which is one of the reasons I hope to table this.
So we've got a couple of members with hands up. Representative Gramlich.
Thank you, Senator. I just wanted to, some of my curiosity has, my questions have been answered in terms of what points.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
We've got a tabling motion on the floor. That's what was requested. I offered the table. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
We got a second from Representative Kryzak?
Yes.
Okay. So we got a tabling motion made by Representative Bickford and seconded by Representative Kryzak. So that's not debatable, I guess, so we have to take a vote at this point. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. For those that do want more discussion, if this is tabled, there'll definitely be more discussion on it next time we take it up. But so has everybody now voted?
Senator Pouliot.
Senator Pouliot voted in favor, I believe. Yep,
Okay, I see it now. Yep.
So that's unanimous. That item is now tabled. So we will go on to the next section.
We are now moving into the language parts of the bill. You've finished all of the ones that relate to appropriations and allocations. The first part of the bill is Part B that relates to the Taxation Committee. As Mr. Sagasser explained, this is the sort of umbrella conformity provision in the budget bill that changes the current date in statute of December 31st, 2019 to December 31st, 2020, would be incorporating all of the federal changes in the Internal Revenue Code that were made up through the end of the 2020 calendar year. Conformity that has other parts in this bill which relate to exceptions from that date in the areas in which the administration is proposing variations from full conformity with what federal law says. Those are in other parts to follow, but Part B itself is simply changing the date for conformity in general. And then adjustments are in different parts.
Okay, is there any discussion or questions from members of the committee? This is just changing the dates, but this isn't changing anything, at least this, what you just talked about, isn't changing anything about how we do conformity, but just the dates.
That's right. I should mention, though, that the fiscal note on the supplemental bill describes the fiscal impact of this provision as a loss of revenue of $1.78 million in FY22. estimated. That number is not a number for just Part B. That's a number for all of the other conformity additions and subtractions that they're making in this bill. So it's not a fiscal note for Part B by itself. It's a fiscal note for Part B as adjusted by the other conformity related changes that the administration is proposing.
So does that mean, Julie, that if we have concerns about some of the other conformity provisions, that we should not vote on this because then we are approving, in essence, the amount under the MRS estimated?
No, I don't think that means I don't think by approving this part, you've indicated that you approve the other parts, but I just wanted to indicate that that was mentioned. I think the question was asked yesterday, and I think I heard a number that said that if it was just this part, that it would be a loss of revenue in the vicinity of 100 million. I hope I'm correct in saying that. That's what I heard. And the adjustments make considerable reductions in that amount from this, but the amount is there. I mentioned it for your information rather than that you would be adopting it at this point.
Any further discussion from members of the committee?
Well, I sort of following along with Representative Sachs' question. I don't feel the necessity of voting yes or no on this date at this point when we are unsure of what all the ramifications of adopting this date might be at this point.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think we need to vote on this if folks are not comfortable voting on it right now. But I would like to hear explanation from Julie and be able to ask questions and discuss all of the aspects around conformity as we start to move through them. So I hope I would just hope that we not table them without that discussion. I think it's important that we have that and be able to ask questions. So if I'm sensing the direction of the committee and what folks are saying, should we not vote on this and let Julie continue to review the other sections on conformity, and then maybe we have one tabling motion to table all of that for further debate and a vote at a later time? Seeing no objection, I think that would make sense. Do you think that makes sense, Representative Terry?
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Okay. So Julie, if you could just continue to walk us through the other sections on conformity and we can discuss and get questions answered on those.
Sure. Part D is the next section that relates to the Taxation Committee, and it is a provision which it includes an addition modification amount added of income that would be added back in from federal adjusted gross income for federal excess business losses allowed to non-corporate taxpayers pursuant to the CARES Act for tax years beginning in 2018 through 2020. As you can see, the federal law is retroactive in certain aspects, and this is one of them. It would also provide a subtraction modification for carryover and subtraction amounts which are added. These are areas where specifically I'm going to have to defer to Maine Revenue Services with regard to any questions, but it's an area where it's proposing that the state of Maine not conform to the federal treatment of these taxpayers' excess business losses for individual taxpayers. Oh, and there is some changes in the change package which are identified. They just clarify wording and correct indentation of paragraphs. So they're not substantive changes with regard to the change package changes for this particular provision.
Are there any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none.
Actually, Senator Chipman, could we have somebody from MRS break this down into people language?
Yeah, is there someone from MRS who can do that for us?
Hello, Senator Chipman, Representative Terry, and members of the Taxation Committee. My name is Daniel D'Alessandro, and I'm an attorney with the Office of Tax Policy. And I can answer your questions on this part and some of the others. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
So this provision, we have, as John Sagasser said, there were a few bills since our last conformity date: the Family First Act, the CARES Act, and the more recent Consolidated Appropriations Act. And there's one other one that was important, and that's the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, which was actually from 2017, but the CARES Act modified a number of provisions from that bill, and this is one of them. So this is the limitation on non-corporate losses. If you had a non-corporate business, pass-through business, or partnership, for example, and you had a large loss in that business, you can use some portion of it to offset your other income. And so you might have wages that you were offsetting with your business losses. And a portion of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which Maine conformed to, limited the amount of losses you could use. And that limit was $250,000 for individuals and $500,000 for married filing jointly, which most of these would be. And so if you had more than $500,000 in losses, you wouldn't be able to use all of that to offset your wages or other income. Maine conformed to that limit. And then the CARES Act, which was enacted early last year, suspended that limit for a few years, 2018, 19, and 20. And what we're proposing here is not to conform to that retroactive suspension of the limit.
Okay. Any questions from members of the committee?
Can I just ask, when you say retroactive to what time?
Tax year 2018.
Okay.
I know you've already covered Part B, but Part B does quite a bit of work. It's conforming to really a large number of provisions. And if you're interested in hearing more details about that, I can. It's also in the fiscal note that was handed out at appropriations yesterday, but I can go over some of those provisions if you have questions or just want to hear what they are.
Looks like we have a question from Senator Pouliot on the chat. What is the revenue that will be generated from Part D?
So this maintains current Maine law, so there's no revenue impact.
No revenue. Okay, so there's no positive or negative impact at all?
Right. There would be a revenue impact if we were to conform to it, because that would be a change in law. But since this is maintaining current Maine law, there's not a revenue impact.
Okay.
Is there another question from Senator Pouliot?
Yeah. So my question is, this is going to come up time and time again because of our unwillingness to fully conform to federal government. So there is actually an impact on Maine businesses or people that would normally get this refund since we're not conforming. So when I asked the question about what is the revenue that will be generated, I guess what I'm also asking is, what would we lose, right, if we do the conformity? So in this case, if we conformed to the federal statute, what kind of revenue impact does that have? I guess is maybe a better way to put it.
All right, let me see if I have that number here.
I have it, Daniel, if you.
Okay, yeah, can you?
Okay, yeah, we estimated in this fiscal year 21, it would be a revenue loss of $20.5 million.
Okay, and is that part of the $100 million cost of conformity or separate?
Separate. The $100 million was for conformity just to the Paycheck Protection Program.
Okay, So now we're looking at another $20 million here in additional taxes that Maine businesses will have to spend if we don't conform.
It's the governor is proposing not to conform, which avoids a revenue loss of $20.5 million. Yes.
Yeah, so Maine businesses not being able to take this deduction are paying essentially. It's not, I mean, they're not sending the money into the government. They're just not able to not send it in. So it's like six one way, half dozen the other. Forgive me if I'm wrong here, and please correct me if I'm off base.
It would be a tax cut that the governor is proposing not to conform to.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
If we don't do this, I mean, these taxes would have to be paid regardless, right? I mean, if we didn't pass anything on this is income that would have to be claimed and taxes would have to be paid on it.
No, that's incorrect. What we're not doing is we're not conforming to allowable deductions that the feds are allowing. So that is a tax on Maine businesses. This one happens to be $20.5 million.
One thing to point out.
Go ahead.
One thing to point out about this provision, it's a timing provision. The losses aren't permanently disallowed. It's the amount of losses that can be deducted in the year of the loss. And there is a carry forward provision attached with this too. That's a subtraction modification. And so for the small number of businesses that are impacted by this, that's ones that have substantial losses over that $500,000 limit, and then also substantial other income to offset, they'll still be able to use those losses in future years.
Right, unless we choose to do this again.
But Dr. Allen or Mr. D'Alessandro, I mean, am I correct in that if we don't pass anything about conformity, then these businesses would have to still claim this income and pay taxes on it? Or am I not correct on that?
That's correct.
Oh, that's right. And in fact, because it's retroactive, they've already paid, or they've already been denied these deductions in the 2018 and 2019 tax year. Again, it's important to remember this was passed in the CARES Act back at the end of March when we were just entering the pandemic. And the federal government was trying to get cash into the hands of taxpayers because everybody was fearful that the economy was going to be in a very bad situation. So by allowing this to be retroactive, it was basically allowing taxpayers to go to the federal government, recalculate their 2018 and 2019 tax returns, and have the federal government send them a check again to provide some liquidity to the system. Federal government can borrow, they can do that.
Right.
The state has to have a balanced budget. The state's ability to come up with $20 million to refund taxpayers for prior tax years is a pretty difficult task.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. But when you look at the fact that our budget's increased $1.4 billion over the last 2.5 years, not so much to come up with 20 million out of that, except now we're asking Maine businesses to pay for it.
Well, I mean, we could certainly continue to debate this, Senator Pouliot. I mean, we're all going to have different opinions about this. I mean, I think it's important to get questions answered and clarify, what's being proposed, and we definitely continue to discuss it more. I think we probably all have different ways of looking at it, but are there any other questions from members of the committee on this section? Or can we continue on with the discussion as we move through other parts of this? Not seeing any hands raised.
Chair?
Go ahead.
We will be coming back to this to further discuss it though, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we discussed at the beginning of the meeting when you started this whole overview of any sections that we want to debate more or aren't unanimous on, we would table and come back to at another meeting. We're just doing an initial review of the sections of the budget having to do with the taxation committee, and if there's any sections that we have no opposition and everybody's on the same page, we can take a unanimous vote so we don't have to do that again later. So
Yes,
So we'll come back.
great. I do have other issues I'd like to address here, but it'd be better for a later time.
Yeah, but if you have any questions, if anybody has any questions, I mean, this is the time to ask questions as we go through this so that we're all clear and we understand what it is that's being proposed. Seeing no other questions, we will let Julie continue to walk us through the next section.
Part E is a similar type of provision to Part D. It's providing for adjustments to conformity by requiring an addition modification for federal business interest deduction that exceeds 30% of adjustable taxable income pursuant to the CARES Act for tax years beginning in 2018 through 2020, and a correlated subtraction modification for carryover and subtraction of the amounts that are added. What these two provisions, the addition and the subtraction, subsequently are doing are adjusting the years in which the business can take these deductions. So it's saying that they don't get to claim the deductions in 2018 through 2020, but they would be able to claim them in subsequent years.
Okay. Any discussion or questions on this? Seeing none, I guess we'll continue.
Oh, I should also have mentioned that the change package it also provides for correction of indentation of paragraphs. Nothing substantive. Part F is a provision relating to the treatment of bonus depreciation and its relationship to the main capital investment credit. This is one of those areas in which I have always deferred to Maine Revenue Services, but the bill is making a no, I'm going to let them explain it. I thought I knew. It provides a qualified improvement property placed in service after December 31st, 2017. Well, in the tax years 2018 through 2020. Or no, just 18 and 19. It excludes it from the main capital investment credit. I'm going to defer to them, Maine Revenue Services.
This is another Tax Cuts and Jobs Act item. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act made a lot of different property eligible for bonus depreciation and expensing. What that meant is instead of getting a deduction over the life of the property, you would take it all in the first year. But there was what was widely considered a drafting error that applied to this qualified improvement property. This is retail property. You may have heard it described as the retail glitch. And it was made 39-year property instead of 15-year property. And so it did not qualify for bonus depreciation. Now, Maine doesn't conform to bonus depreciation, but we have the Maine capital investment credit instead for property placed in service in Maine that would qualify for bonus depreciation. We are proposing to conform to these changes. That's in Part B. But what we're doing here is we're excluding this property that is now eligible for bonus and thus MCIC from the MCIC for tax years 2018 and 2019, thereby preventing the retroactive inclusion of this new property in the credit, but conforming going forward for it would be qualified for the MCIC going forward if it's placed in service in Maine.
Great, thank you, Mr. D'Alessandro. Any questions from members of the committee about this section?
I have a question, Senator Chipman.
Okay, go ahead, Senator Pouliot.
Julie, could you send us a definition of qualified improvement property? I know that it's defined in the code, but if you could send that separately, that would be great.
I will do that.
Thanks.
Seeing no other questions from members of the committee, I guess we are ready to continue.
Are you ready to move on?
Yes, we are.
Oh, okay. Part G is another conformity-related provision. This provision proposes to exclude, to provide an addition modification for the additional charitable contribution deduction allowed to corporations under the CARES Act. And again, the related subtraction modification in subsequent years to be able to carry over the deductions.
One thing I would add to that, if I may.
Sure, go ahead.
So the CARES Act and then the Consolidated Appropriations Act raised the charitable contribution limit for contributions made in 2020 and 21. And we're generally proposing to conform to that, again, as part of Part B. The decoupling provision here is just for fiscal year 2019 filers. And so that's just a small block of those corporations because fiscal year 2019, tax year 2019 is complete. But for calendar year 2020 filers, for all individuals, and for 2021, we're proposing to conform.
Okay. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, we'll continue.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to wave or raise or do something, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry.
Sure.
So Mr. D'Alessandro, may I just ask a quick question, Mr. Chair, about that?
Sure.
About the conformity? Because I'm pinballing back between these are the things we're conforming and these things we are not. And so, Mr. D'Alessandro, it appears that, is there something currently in statute, the reason for doing this is it says it decouples, I'm writing frantically as we're going through these, decouples only for 2019. Does that mean in the CARES Act that they did allow that in 2019 and we're just saying we do not want to do that?
That's correct. This increased charitable contribution limit is for contributions made in calendar year 2020 and 21. There are fiscal year tax filers that don't file on a calendar year.
Right.
So if your fiscal year began, say, July 1st, 2019, that'll overlap into 2020. And so the CARES Act provisions at the federal level will apply to those fiscal year filers, but our proposal at the state is to not reopen the 2019 tax year. And so decouple from those.
Thank
you. Does that answer your question, Representative Sack?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any additional questions from members of the committee?
I have a quick question.
Sure,
Would
Senator.
that require filers who received any kind of a tax credit to owe money back for contributions that they made or not?
So perhaps not all of these filers have already filed, but many of them will have already filed. If we were to conform to the federal treatment, then some taxpayers would be able to receive to pay less tax in Maine for their tax year 2019. Some of them, and again, this is a timing provision, so they still will be able to use this deduction in the future.
Does that answer your question, Senator Pouliot?
Yeah, I think we're going to run into this a lot about timing provisions and maybe can use stuff in the future and maybe can't. But what I'm trying to ascertain is what the cost is going to be to filers now because of these instances where we're not conforming. So I don't know if it's possible on each one of these to share that with us to help fully contextualize what the change means, because I think that for us to say we're decoupling from this and people can't use it, for that filing season, but maybe they could use it in the future. This is complex enough, and particularly, we have some new members on this committee as well. It would be more helpful to look at what's the bottom line in terms of how much this is going to cost some filers, for the state. Because otherwise, to me, it's a bit nebulous.
This provision maintains current law, so wouldn't say it raises the cost to any businesses, but we could get you the numbers that how much of a tax cut it would be to fully conform to the federal treatment.
Thank you.
Representative Bickford, do you have a question?
Yeah, my question is, with all of these changes in conformity where we decouple, can we have the revenue gain or loss on those?
That's what I just asked for.
Oh, is that, okay, you were asking cost of business. I was asking about revenue to the state.
Well, it's the same thing.
Yeah, I agree. I just asked it different. Okay. I'll go back to sleep.
Seeing no additional questions, I guess we will continue.
Part H is repealing 5 sections that are addition and subtraction modifications. And I will read the description to you because I am not going to be able to explain to you exactly what they're doing. The explanation is that it updates and simplifies income tax by conforming to federal net operating loss limitation and the CARES suspension of that limitation. And it applies retroactively in this instance to tax years beginning in 2018. Deferring to Maine Revenue Services for explanation.
This is another Tax Cuts and Jobs Act item. In the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, repealed the corporate minimum tax, alternative minimum tax, and that tax had a limitation on the use of net operating losses. So that's, you have a loss in a previous year, you carry it forward to your current year. And there's a limit on how much of the net operating loss you can use to offset your other income. And there was one in the AMT, but it was repealed. But also in that bill, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the limitation was created to generally apply to the income tax. Maine did not conform to that limitation and does not conform to that limitation now. The CARES Act suspended the limitation. And what we're proposing here is to conform both to the limitation and to the CARES Act suspension of that limitation. So during the suspension, Maine tax law will continue to be the same. And then when the suspension is over, we'll come into conformity with the federal limitation.
Okay, great. Thank you for that explanation. Not seeing any questions from members of the committee at this point. So I guess we are ready to continue.
No, I'm sorry, Senator Chipman. Would you prefer if I did the raise hand electronically as opposed to frantically waving?
I don't know, because if I don't call on you, maybe just speak up verbally, because I can't see everybody's.
Yeah,
I can't see everybody on the screen because we're sharing this document. So I can only see like 5 people and I have to keep scrolling down to see everybody. So I'll do that the best I can. But yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, I know I ask a lot of technical questions, and I promise I'll do even more research in between. But Mr. D'Alessandro, I just want to make sure I'm clear. So the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act repealed some limits. We did not conform to that. Then the CARES Act came and said, okay, we're going to suspend that limitation. And now we want to conform to that. So you can tell I try to break this down. If I'm not doing it correctly, please let me know.
The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act repealed the limit in the alternative minimum tax and established the limit in the general income tax. And we didn't conform to the limit when it was established for the general income tax.
For the general income tax, okay.
The CARES Act then suspended the limit, so it doesn't apply, basically putting the federal government in conformity with Maine. We're proposing to come into full conformity. So during the suspension, we won't have the limit, and then after the suspension, we will have the limit, the same as the federal government.
And is theirs now, because they changed it from the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, is that going to be now the standard, or is that only temporary?
The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act limitation was permanent, so that'll be going forward.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right, so I guess we're ready to continue, Julie.
Okay, at this point, I think leaving things that would technically be called conformity, not necessarily related to the Federal Internal Revenue Code, but issues that are raised because they are issues that have been raised in Maine income tax law because of COVID restrictions and the way that other states may be adjusting to the different world that we're now living in. So Part I has two provisions related to the way taxpayers will be treated based upon their residence and the fact that different patterns of residence are occurring as people work remotely in response to COVID needs. The first section relates to income tax paid to other jurisdictions. We currently have a provision in statute which provides a credit for tax paid to other jurisdictions, but it's, I think, for Maine residents. In instances where we have people who are living in Maine and working in other states, there becomes the issue of where the income from that work is going to be taxed. The state where a person resides generally has jurisdiction to tax the revenue that that person earns. However, if they're earning their money from a job, which is ordinarily in Boston, there may be different situations to apply to Massachusetts' ability to perhaps tax that income. And not all states provide for sourcing of income equally. So if a person, a Maine resident, I think that's the example that has been used, it lives in Maine, but in the pre-COVID world traveled to Boston to work every day, Massachusetts would claim some ability to tax that income. If under COVID, that person is staying in Maine and working remotely from Maine, then apparently it becomes complicated based upon how Massachusetts sees that income. I'm not going to explain it any further than that, and leave it to Maine Revenue Services to explain it in more detail. I think they did that yesterday as well at the public hearing. The other one is a the other section 2 in Part I is really a different issue. It relates to the educational opportunity tax credit, which in order to claim under current law, the taxpayer has to be working in Maine in order to claim it. And the section 2I in this would allow people to continue to claim it even though they may not be working, but the reason why they're working is because of a COVID state of emergency.
So just a point of order, I think we need to table all the sections that we talked about regarding conformity and have a vote to do that. So before we get into discussing this Part I and asking questions, could someone make a tabling motion on all of the sections that we just discussed about conformity?
I'll make a tabling motion on all parts related to conformity.
I also had a issue raised about voting. So our clerk pointed out that for voting, we need people to be present in terms of being able to see them and hear them. So if everyone can turn their video on as well, because we're going to be taking more votes, we need to be able to see everybody. It's according to the joint order that was passed on the meeting remotely. So we have a
second Representative Bickford's motion to table this.
Okay, so we have a motion from Representative Bickford to table all of the items regarding conformity and seconded by Representative Gramlich. All those in favor, please raise your hand using the reactions section at the bottom of the screen. All no voted.
Just waiting on Rep. Hanley.
Representative Hanley, we need to be able to see your video. If you could turn that on.
And Rep. Kryzak as well.
Representative Kryzak, could you turn your video on and vote, please?
And Senator Pouliot, if you could turn your video on, please. Thank you.
So is that everything?
Just waiting on Rep. Hanley. He might have stepped out.
Do we need video on to raise our hand? Is that what did I miss that?
No, it's for the voting. When we're taking votes, the joint order that was passed requires that video and audio be on when we're voting.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
So, yeah. Representative Hanley with us. Can you turn your video on, please?
His video's been off for a little bit, so I think he might have stepped out.
So, I'm not sure what we do. If he's here, he should vote. If he's not here, I mean, you see his name on the screen, but I don't know whether that counts as being here. Oh, we can't count his vote if we can't see him. So everybody.
He may have stepped out.
Yeah, right. But I mean, do we have to have a vote from him or not? I guess is the question. I'm not really sure. I mean,
Well, what if he stepped out of the committee to go use the bathroom or whatever? I mean, that's no different.
Right. But he should probably sign off, I guess, but I don't know. So everybody whose video is on and able to vote is voting in favor. So that's unanimous of those that are meeting the requirements according to the joint order for voting. So that motion carries and the items regarding conformity are tabled. So now we can go to part I, and we had an explanation from Julie about that. And I guess we'd like to hear from Maine Revenue Services about that. Mr. D'Alessandro.
So section I-1 is the credit for income tax paid to other taxing jurisdictions. As Julie said, the state of residence will tax their resident on all of their income. And then a state where you actually work, where the income is sourced, will tax the taxpayer on just the income that was earned in their state. So going to the example of a Maine resident working in Boston, Maine would tax their income, all of their income, and Massachusetts would just tax the wages that were earned in Boston. To prevent double taxation, Maine would then offer a credit for taxes paid to Massachusetts. And I'm using Massachusetts as the example here, but it could be any state. What happened during the pandemic is that a lot of people who were physically working in another state began teleworking from home. So instead of commuting into Boston, the Maine resident is now working from their home in Maine. And under the law of most states in Maine and Massachusetts prior to the pandemic, that would mean the income changed source. Instead of being sourced to Massachusetts, it would now be sourced to Maine because of the teleworkers working within Maine. But Massachusetts took a different approach. Massachusetts and a few other states took a different approach during the pandemic. And what they said is, even though the person is no longer working in our state, we're going to continue to tax them as if they were continuing to commute into our state. Now, Maine law doesn't allow for that. Maine law is not going to provide a credit. Current Maine law doesn't provide a credit to a Maine resident in those circumstances. Maine law would say the person is working in Maine, and so the income is sourced to Maine. And this could result in those residents being double taxed both by Maine, because Maine is saying you're working here, the income's sourced here, and by Massachusetts, or a few other states taking that approach, who are saying we're going to continue to tax you as if you were still working in our state. In order to prevent that double taxation, we took administrative action during the tax year on withholding and estimated tax payments, but Maine Revenue Services can't actually change the total amount of tax due. And so that's what this provision is doing. It's providing a credit for the Maine resident in that situation if they're still being taxed by the other state. And that will prevent them from prevent double taxation. And this is just for tax year 2020. Massachusetts has recently extended their policy into tax year 2021. And so that is an open issue. But this is the supplemental budget. It's emergency legislation dealing with tax year 2020. And when you see our other department bills, this provision will be there as well. And we can have that discussion about 2021.
Great. Thank you, Mr. D'Alessandro. Is there any questions from members of the committee? So just so we're clear, so folks that are working for a company located somewhere else but are now living in Maine or relocated to Maine, as long as Maine is what they're meeting the definition of for residency and they're considered a resident of Maine, they'd be paying income tax to the state of Maine, right?
They will be paying, right? So we're talking about Maine residents here, either statutory residents or domicile residents. And they will be paying income tax to the state of Maine, but they will be receiving a tax credit for the income tax they pay to the other jurisdiction if the other jurisdiction is continuing to tax them. So Maine is effectively receding to the other state.
Really? Okay, so if they're meeting all the residency requirements and they're a resident of Maine, but another state taxes them anyway, we would give them no credit for that?
So we normally wouldn't, right? If they're working in Maine and the income is sourced to Maine. But I think what was important here is the governor of Maine, governor of Massachusetts, governors all across the country said, stay home. Don't telecommute, don't commute across state lines, stay home and telework. And we don't want Maine residents to suffer negative tax implications because they were complying with these health and safety orders.
Mm-hmm.
And so.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's important. I just think that, you know, if someone is living here 12 months out of the year and they're now a remote worker for a company that's located in Massachusetts, but they're doing all that work from home in Maine, that if Massachusetts continues to tax them, not that we shouldn't give a credit to the Maine taxpayer, but we should find some way to rectify that because they shouldn't be getting taxed by another state if they're doing the work in their home in Maine 12 months a year, you know, and that's my only concern if there's any situations like that.
That's a good point. And New Hampshire, the state of New Hampshire has taken that view and is suing the state of Massachusetts before the Supreme Court. And so we'll see if they're successful there. That would certainly have implications for Maine as well. Okay. And I think that point really applies to whether this policy gets extended into tax year 2021. But our view for 2020 was that we're right in the middle of the pandemic and the tax concerns should recede to the health concerns.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't think any of us want people to be taxed by two states. So it sounds like there's a court case that will maybe resolve that issue that I just brought up, but we're giving people a credit from what they pay to the other states. They won't be double taxed. So that's good. Any questions from members of the committee or on this section? Are we ready to vote?
Just a quick clarification. This what we're doing is sort of blessing what the state is already doing. That the state had already made the exemption. The Maine Revenue Service had already made the exemptions. We're just agreeing that this is the best way forward.
Well, we took administrative action on withholding and estimated tax payments. So those were the payments that were due throughout the year in line with this policy. But Maine Revenue Services can't change the amount of tax due. And so that's what you're doing here. You're changing, if you agree with this proposal, then you're changing the actual amount due. You're raising that credit. And that would be in line with what we did administratively over the year. But I would say it's a little more than blessing that policy. It's really enacting it as state law.
Right. And so to Senator Julio's and Representative Bickford's point, it would be nice to have an estimate of how much we are saving taxpayers not gathering that revenue, however you want to spin that, a sense of the fiscal impact either way of that particular proposal, if that is available.
Yeah, that will. I'm sure staff will try to pull that together for us. It would be great to see how much we're saving people from otherwise being double taxed. A question from Representative Perry.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I apologize. I had to step out for a little while, and so I missed most of this. So I'll be voting to move forward. But I think this is an issue that I'm hoping we can have a larger conversation about through session on how income tax works for people working remotely or for short periods of time in the state, because I know some changes have been made to that over the years, and it may be a good time to re-examine it.
Good point. Any additional concerns, questions from members of the committee? Not seeing any. So all those in favor of this section, please signify by using the reactions button at the bottom of your screen. Representative Senator Pouliot, we need to be able to see your video. Is that all set, Avery? Representative Kryzak, we need to be able to see your video as well.
Dave, you're muted.
Everybody voted?
Avery, are you trying to say something? You look like you're muted.
Oh, yeah, I am muted. Okay, just waiting on Rep. Perry. And Rep. Kryzak, just to turn on the video.
Is it on?
Yep.
Yep.
We can see it.
Okay.
Turn it off.
Rep. Perry.
Yeah, thanks, buddy.
So you all set, Avery?
Waiting on Rep. Perry's video. Okay, perfect. Yes, all set.
Okay. So we are, that's unanimous.
Moving on.
Yes.
Next part is Part K, which this is the section that was referred to earlier. We scrolled down to see it back when you were talking about the Part A deappropriations, but this is the section, the part that extends from July 1st, 2021 to July 1st, 2023, the time to repay previously authorized financial agreement for acquisition, licensing, installment, implementation, maintenance, and support of computer hardware, software, and other systems to support MRS tax collection efforts.
Are there any questions from members of the committee about this section? Seeing none, and since we discussed it before, I guess we're ready to vote. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand using the reactions section at the bottom of your screen. Has everybody voted?
Rep. Carmichael, did you vote? Yep. Okay. Rep. Kryzak, Rep. Perry.
Representative Kryzak, we need you to vote. Looks like everybody's in favor.
Okay, got it.
Great, so that's unanimous. I guess we're ready to continue, Julie.
You have now finished all of the parts that are in the supplemental budget as it was originally presented. The administration is proposing adding some additional parts, however, and I neglected to copy that text in a way that I could share it with you. If I can stop sharing this document, which we are now done with, and I'm going to attempt to share a different one here.
Okay. So was these some new proposals that weren't presented yesterday?
They were presented yesterday, but they are not what you were previously looking at. Was the language that was in the original supplemental budget submitted by the administration. They handed out yesterday as part of the change package provisions that would add, they're proposed to add things to the original language, to add new parts. And can you see a chart now that I'm scrolling through?
We're seeing provisions in the supplemental budget.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So we've gone through, I mean, we just finished with K here. And the original part of that chart, which was mailed to you previously, and you may have made paper copies of, the new provisions were added last night. So a new version of it was added for this morning, and it might not have been in time for people to print it out or even to look at it. But starting with new part U, there are several new parts that they're proposing to add in. Part U relates to the treatment of foreign income, and it expands the addition modification for the amount of global intangible low taxed income deduction to include the total amount of foreign derived intangible income, frequently referred to as FDII, and global intangible low tax income deduction claimed under the code. They're going to have to explain these. I haven't had time to think much of anything about what these are doing. By they, I mean Maine Revenue Services, of course.
Can Maine Revenue Services please explain these for us? Mr. D'Alessandro, could you explain these, or someone else from Maine Revenue Services?
I'm sorry, are you able to hear me now?
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
All right. So this is the foreign derived intangible income deduction, or FDII deduction, and this was also enacted by the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which Maine does currently conform to. And this is a deduction based on your foreign sales. And the intent here was to lower the federal tax rate for products that were produced in the United States and then exported to foreign markets. And it's part of a pair. There's also, Julie mentioned, the global GILTI, which is a parallel deduction that applies to products that are produced outside of the United States and sold in foreign markets. And both of them are aimed at reducing the US tax rates on those incomes and aligning them. And that works well at the federal level, where they are both aligned together, but it doesn't have the same state tax implications. And what we're proposing here is to decouple from the federal treatment, thereby disallowing the FDII deduction. And what we're trying to do here is to allow the federal policy to continue as it is and allow Maine to piggyback on that federal policy to the extent that it is helpful. And that extent is in question, but to the extent that it is helpful, we're able to piggyback on that federal policy without sharing in the cost by decoupling from it. And this is a deduction just for corporations.
And how exactly does it do that, Mr. D'Alessandro?
I'm sorry, we had a question from Representative Bickford. Has his hand up?
Yeah, my question is, and with FDII and GILTI, we took care of those in the last round of conformity in the prior term in the 129th. And I guess my question is, if this is a policy change, this is an entire policy change. This should be a separate bill. It shouldn't be included in the supplemental budget because you're making an entire policy change. I think this should be a separate bill and there's no way I'm going to support this.
Okay. We have a question from Representative Sachs. Or did you want to respond to that, Mr. D'Alessandro?
Well, I think that it's included in this bill because it is a conformity item, like the rest of the conformity items. And by including it in this bill, we were able to, the administration was able to provide a roughly revenue neutral conformity package. And that included being able to conform to much of the CARES, most of the CARES, Family First Act, and Consolidated Appropriations Act, but that comes at a cost to the state. And this is an offsetting conformity item that allows that conformity and brings, right? That's why it's included here.
So if I might be corrected then. This is to conform with federal?
No, this is a conformity item, but it decouples from the federal treatment of FDII.
Right, so we're changing. Okay, yeah, I can't support it. Thank you.
Representative Sachs?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. D'Alessandro, I just wondered when you said it piggybacks on the federal, but to help us, but just not to incur the cost. Can you explain that a little bit more, please?
The federal policy with FDII is to create the same federal tax rate on these exports that you would have under GILTI if the manufacturing was done outside of the country, so that people exporting from the United States have the same federal tax rate they would have if they were having similar sales but did their manufacturing outside of the United States. And so this is effectively an adjustment to the effective federal tax rate. Maine has its own tax rate and isn't part of that policy setting of what the federal tax rate should be on this income. And so the alignment of the federal rate has been accomplished by the federal government. Maine's conformity is another tax expenditure, perhaps incentivizing this activity, but not related to that alignment of the federal rate.
Is there any additional questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, are there any other conformity related issues, Julie? Because we took a vote earlier to table all the conformity related issues, and then this is also conformity related. So I just wanted any issues like that. It seems like we're going to not be on the same page on or want to discuss further. So are there any other conformity related items in these additional changes that we're looking at now?
Yes, I think all of them are conformity related.
Well, why don't we review all of them, and then if I may suggest tabling them along with the other ones, because it seems like we're probably not going to be on the same page or ready to vote today on conformity items.
Mr. Chair, can I ask?
Sure.
There's the sheet that she's got in front of us doesn't relate at all to what we're talking about. Do you see that same sheet?
I'm looking at provisions in the supplemental budget.
Yes, and this is, yeah, Part A. We're not on Maine Board of Tax Appeals or Betty or, we're not on any of this right now.
Are you, you should be seeing,
No, you need to scroll down.
Can you see me scrolling up and down right now?
No.
No.
On the screen.
Okay.
I think what we're talking about is
I'm having the same problem I was having before then. I'm not sure why I'm having this problem. The additions are on the last page of the document you're seeing. You're right. The beginning of the chart is the things that we've already discussed before. I'm sorry, I don't know what the problem was before, and I don't know what it is now. I can I can close it out and try to come back in again and see if it works better this time.
Okay, thank you.
You could do that. It would be good to have on the screen what we're discussing. And
Yep. No, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'll try again here. Share screen.
Is that something that you also emailed out to us? Maybe we'd have on our emails.
Yes,
as well?
it was emailed to you early this morning, around 8 o'clock.
Okay.
Mhm. Why isn't it showing up? Shit. Okay. Okay, I've got the chart back. Are people seeing it scroll now?
Yep, scrolling down now, yep.
All right, oh, good. I don't know what that problem was, but let's see. I'm going to the bottom here. Okay, so we've got part U. Yeah, okay. Part U is the part that we were just talking about, the part related to the treatment of foreign income under the GILTI and the FDII provisions that Daniel just explained to you. There are 3 other parts that need to be talked about, which I'm not sure about part W, the forgivable loans portion, but I think the others are related to, well, I don't know, our conformity issues. Part V has to do with the Payment Protection Program loans, the issue that was discussed a lot at the public hearing yesterday, in terms of how those would be treated under Maine law. Under federal law, the Paycheck Protection Program loans that are made to businesses under the CARES Act were provided that the loan, if the business spent the loans on salary for employees or other purposes related to making sure that they were going to keep their business going during the pandemic, those loans would be forgiven. And what the original CARES Act provided was that when those loans were forgiven, ordinarily under pre-COVID tax law, loan forgiveness would have been considered income to the business. But the CARES Act provided that the forgiveness of those loans from the PPP loans would not be considered to be income. It was silent with regard to the expenses that the business had when it spent that money that it received from the loan to pay salaries or to provide supplies that were needed for their business in order to keep it going as a result of the pandemic. So for a long time, for several months, there was the question of whether the business would also get to claim those deductions. So they would be getting a loan without having to count it as income, one tax benefit, and another tax benefit if they were allowed to deduct it. The Internal Revenue Services, I think in July or August or something, came out with a ruling saying that because the law specifically provides that the loan forgiveness is not considered taxable income, that the business would not be able to take advantage of the deduction for when they spent the money that they got from the loan for allowable expenditures. However, there was a lot of discussion about whether that was the right answer. And in the CCA, I've forgotten what the CCA stands for now, but the act that Congress passed in December that took effect on December 27th, Congress said, well, no, actually, we think that the business should get the double benefit of not having to claim the loan forgiveness as income, and they should also be able to claim the deductions. What Part P says is that they can claim the deductions, but when the loan is forgiven, they're going to have to treat that as income for Maine tax purposes. Did I get that right, Daniel?
Yes, that's correct. At the federal level, the recipient receives a PPP loan that loan's forgiven and that cancellation of debt income is excluded for federal purposes, but the expenses are still allowed and thus offset other income that the business is earning at the federal level. And that's a tax expenditure. It's an incentive to these businesses, and it comes at a cost. And it's something the federal government is well able to do to stimulate the economy in that way because they're able to deficit spend. But at the state level, we're faced with a different problem, trying to put a balanced budget together and to fund the tax expenditures that we have. And so at the state level, we're proposing to keep the cancellation of debt income as you would under current Maine law and longstanding cancellation of debt treatment, and allow the expenses that are paid by those loans to offset the cancellation of debt income. So that should keep most taxpayers at tax neutral situation with no harm and no benefit. If they have other income, then they will be taxed on that other income. And if they have other expenses, those other expenses can reduce the other income they have. But the PPP forgiveness will not show up as income, or will show up as income and will then be offset by the expenses that were paid for by the loan. So I think a common example would be you receive the loan, you pay your payroll. The loan gets forgiven and you have some income, but those payroll expenses that were funded by the federal government through the forgiven loan will offset that cancellation of debt income.
Great, thank you, Mr. D'Alessandro. I think it's important that we all have a clear understanding of this. I think there's a lot of misinformation out there right now among our constituents, among people across the state, among the business community. So I appreciate your really clear explanation of that. And I guess one question that I'd like to ask is that, so we're basically counting the loan as income, but allowing the money the loan's used for to be deducted from expenses, for tax purposes. What if we were to not count the loan as income and not allow the expenses to be deducted? Would that still have the same effect in terms of revenue coming into the state for tax purposes, or impact on the businesses in terms of what their tax liability is, or would that have a different impact?
So that's a good question. And that's the approach that was taken under the CARES Act, where the income from the forgiven loans, right, it's not receiving the loan that's income, it's having the loan forgiven. That income was excluded under the CARES Act, and under the IRS guidance, the deductions were also excluded. And that is the opposite of what Maine current law is and what we're proposing here, but would get taxpayers and the state to roughly the same place. That is tax neutral treatment, no harm from the PPP loan forgiveness, but also no benefit. I think one point I would like to make that's not in this legislation here is that we have heard, and I'm sure you have heard, that this coming tax filing season is going to be difficult for a lot of these businesses. And what Maine Revenue Services is intending to do is provide interest and penalty relief for these PPP loan recipients. If they're unable to pay their taxes on time on April 15th, we're prepared to waive interest, intending to waive interest and penalties, giving them time to come up with the money, giving the economy time to recover, giving the federal government time to enact additional stimulus if they're going to do so, and giving this legislature additional time to consider the large numbers of bills on this and other related issues that you'll be hearing.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I only throw that out there because I think it might be better if we could to not tax the PPP loans, and then on the other end, just not count the deductions. But thinking about it more, it might be more difficult and complicated, as you just talked about, with all the work that needs to be done for businesses to prepare their taxes, because then they'd have to separate out which deductions they paid for with loan money and which ones they didn't, so they'd know what they could deduct and what they couldn't. So that might be more complicated for them. So I think if the outcome's the same and the impact's the same on the taxpayer, then the way you proposed it probably makes the most sense. But I just wanted to get some clarification. We have a few questions. I think Representative Perry had his hand up. Do you still have a question, Representative Perry?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I tuned in a little bit late yesterday, so I missed some of the public hearing on this, and I really would like to understand quite a bit more, because I think one thing, I think we're maybe the term income isn't the proper term, because I think it's just simply revenue. I think people think of income as something that's taxed. These loans were revenue into a business, and then they have their expenses. I don't know how anyone would separate how you could claim any given expense was directly tied to the PPP. And my thought is businesses like hospitality, restaurants, hotels, even with whatever they receive, they're not likely to be making a profit this year anyhow, just lucky to survive. So I don't think tax would be an issue for them. Businesses in the middle may or may not get a tax change or increase because of this. It seems like the only people who are going to benefit are people who didn't really need the money in the first place. That will end up being straight income. So I'd be curious to know more specifics, and including, so if people received the PPP in 2020, where they're likely to have their worst business year, but it's forgiven in 2021, when is that income, 2020 or 2021? Because that could make a big difference. And I got about a half a dozen more questions in my head, but I'll leave it at that for now.
So I think that's a good point. The Paycheck Protection Program was enacted in the spring, right at the beginning of the pandemic, when we didn't know, nobody knew how bad it was going to be and what industries were going to be impacted, which ones would do well, which ones would be really hurt. And I think there was a great deal of concern that everybody would be really hurt. And so the program requirements were very loose, and a lot of businesses were able to get the Paycheck Protection Program loans. And as you said, the ones that were really hurt are unlikely to have taxable income in 2020. I'm not going to say that none of them will, but ones that are showing losses on their other income aren't going to be paying taxes in Maine, right? Won't have a tax bill on that. There will be some in the middle that do have some taxable income, and there'll be some that did well, right? There will be a range of PPP recipients. And you're right, being able to, the federal policy allowing the expenses to offset other income will only benefit those that have other income to offset. So I think that's a good point. All right, and your second question was the timing. Under current Maine law, the timing is for the cancellation of debt income occurs when the loan is forgiven, and the expenses are when the expenditure is made. And so you're right, that could spread over multiple years. I think it would be a little bit more complicated for businesses on an accrual basis. But what we're proposing here is to tie them into the same tax year so that they directly offset. The expenses will be in 2020, and if the taxpayer reasonably expects that their loan will be forgiven, I think at this point most of them generally do know whether the loan is going to be forgiven or not. They would take that into account on their 2020 return so that it would offset right in that first year.
Mr. D'Alessandro, if the loan is forgiven or not forgiven, it wouldn't matter. It would still be taxable for what's being proposed here. Is that what I'm hearing?
If the loan is not forgiven, then the tax implications are different. When you receive a loan, you have that new proceeds, but you also have a liability that offsets it. And so that's not taxable income. You have money that came into your account, but it's completely offset by a liability that you have. So there are no tax implications with that. It's not until the loan is forgiven that it gives rise to income.
Okay. Do you have additional questions, Representative Perry?
Yeah, actually, if I could. So I think you answered part of it, because I'm thinking a sole proprietor can't really do a loss carryback of carry forward, only corporations, I believe. So that seems like it's good news if someone gets it forgiven this year it's presumed to be last year. But I'm just thinking on the federal level, if someone's a sole proprietor and say they have $100,000 PPP loan and they end up with $100,000 in profit that year, I mean, they're getting off something like 25% federal tax, and then the Social Security, which is 8 point some odd percent, then they have to match it. And that's almost a 40% benefit to someone who did well on the federal level. And so what I'm guessing the state tax implication for someone who made $100,000 off PPP at most would be like $5,000. Is that about right?
So I don't know exactly on the federal numbers, but I think ballpark that's right. On the state numbers, 5, top rate is 7.15, so it could be a little bit higher. The sole proprietor, as you pointed out, the sole proprietor treatment is a little different than corporations.
Well, thank you.
Mr. D'Alessandro, what you were just talking about with the loan, what they spend on the loan versus what their expenses are, I mean, it's all going to cancel out. I mean, they wouldn't pay that 7.15%, would they, if they had deductible expenses in the equivalent amount on the other end?
If they have deductible expenses in the equivalent amount, then it'll cancel out. The sole proprietor treatment is a little more complicated because you're looking at both the income of the business, but also the person's wages, right? The individual's income, what they earn for their own compensation. And that would still be taxed, just like if a business receives a PPP loan and then uses it to pay their employee, the business gets a deduction, but the employee is still taxed on their wages, even if they were funded by the PPP loan.
Right.
And so that's going to happen with the sole proprietor too. The wages that they pay themselves, it's not actually a wage, but their owner compensation, they'll still be taxed on that.
I mean, what we're hearing, in the last day or so since this was proposed yesterday, is, some businesses, I think there's some confusion. They think they're going to be paying more taxes because of this, and it sounds like it's all going to cancel out. I mean, are there any circumstances where what's being proposed will result in more taxes for businesses?
So there is, I think, a lot of confusion on how it works, and then also, this is not an increase in taxes from Maine current law and longstanding federal law on cancellation of debt. This is maintaining current law. Right, as I said, the cancellation of debt income is offset by your expenses if you spend it on deductible expenses. I think that people view this as a tax increase based on perhaps what they were expecting or what they were seeing at the federal level. And, the federal changes didn't come till December 27th. Before that, this was very similar to the treatment at the federal level. But still, if somebody's mindset was they were expecting it to happen, or they're seeing this at the federal level, then that expectation, I think, really drives a lot of what they're seeing here now at the state level.
I mean, if a business can get a grant or a forgivable loan, they don't have to pay taxes on that, and then they can deduct all the expenses they use the money for at the federal level. That's great for the business. And it'd be great if we could do that at the state level, but we don't have the ability to print money like the federal government. So, I mean, I don't know. I think what you propose seems fair, but I don't want to get into a lot of debate about it. Are there any additional questions from members of the committee? You have more questions, Representative Perry?
Yeah, I do. Thank you. Not so much, maybe just a clarification, Mr. D'Alessandro. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The tax filers are still going to get that double benefit through their federal tax returns, just not on their state tax returns. Is that correct?
That's correct. And it's worth a lot more on the federal return too, because the federal tax rate is higher.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much for that.
Representative Perry, do you have any additional questions?
No, thank you for checking. No, I'm all set for right now.
So, Mr. D'Alessandro, are these forgivable loans, aren't they required to be used for business expenses? So everything they have to be used for under the terms of the loan would be deductible, right, for the business?
I would expect that for most taxpayers that it would all be used on deductible expenses.
I mean, if it's not used for a business expense, I think would have to pay it back. I don't know. I haven't looked into it too much in terms of how it works, but that's my understanding, is that they have to be used for business expenses to keep the business going through the pandemic and the recession. And if that's the case, it seems like everything they spend the money on would be a deduction for the business, so that it would be deductible in Maine under this proposal. It'd be tax on the forgivable loan, but it would be deducted on the other end. But okay, well, I guess there's no additional questions from members of the committee. Does this conclude all of the additional sections on conformity, Julie, or is there more for us?
There are two more change package proposals. Should I begin those now?
Sure, that'd be great.
Okay. The next one is the proposed new Part W, which the final two relate to the Consolidated Appropriations Act. That's the thing that I may have referred to as the CCA before, but it's actually the CAA. This is the federal law that was enacted in December, just last month. That law provided for some forgiveness of other loans, and this provision in Part W would require an addition modification for certain other loan forgiveness under the CAA. I don't know what those loans are in terms of what the expansion is, but it was an expansion that took effect in December that the administration is proposing not to conform to the forgiveness of those loans. Doesn't say anything about expenses, so I'm assuming that those expenses would be allowable.
Okay, is there any questions from members of the committee on that? New Part W?
Yeah, I just wonder if we can have some additional information about it. Doesn't have to be now, but just have them come forward.
So the CARES Act had certain other loans and financial assistance. These are small business loans and other financial assistance for small businesses. And they didn't have any tax provisions associated with them. And so they followed standard tax law. If they were forgiven, which some of them could be to some extent, that would be taxable income and expenses would be allowed. And the direct grants would also be taxable income. What the Consolidated Appropriations Act did was create the same double benefit treatment that it did for PPP loans, excluding the loan forgiveness and the grants from income and allowing the deductions. And the proposal here is to have the same treatment that there is with PPP. So that would be no double benefit, including both the income and the expenses.
So in this one, they also allowed expenses to be deducted, but didn't count it as income?
Yes.
And is there a list somewhere, Mr. D'Alessandro, of which ones those affected?
We can get that for you.
Thank you.
Seeing no additional questions, I guess we're ready for new Part X.
New Part X relates to deduction for business meals. This one also, I think, sort of probably originates back with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which made some fairly significant reduction in the types of business meals expenses that could be deducted. The Consolidated Appropriation Act, I don't know if it exactly restores it to what it was before the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, but it provides some expansion of what types of business meals expenses can be deducted for federal income tax purposes. Part X would require that those expanded deductions be added back for main purposes. So it would leave business deductions the same as they were before this expansion in the CAA. That's it.
The only thing
Go ahead.
The only thing I would add to that is this proposal would conform for tax year 2020 just because of the administrative and compliance burdens with shifting, and then would decouple from going forward. And that this is also just a temporary change from the Consolidated Appropriations Act. So Maine law would conform with the federal change for tax year 2020, and then it would decouple for 21 and 22, maintaining what is now current law.
Any questions from members of the committee on this? Seeing none, so I guess that concludes the rest of these additional changes that we just started going through, having to do with conformity. So is there a motion to table these additional items related to conformity?
I'll make a motion to table.
We have a motion from Representative Terry. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I
Representative
second.
Matlack.
Seconded by Representative Matlack. All those in favor, please signify by using the reactions button at the bottom of your screen. Please make sure your video is on so we can see you.
Just waiting on Rep. Kryzak.
Representative Kryzak, are you
I'm
with us?
coming. Give me a minute.
All right.
I'm here. I'm just turning everything back on.
I see you. There we go. All right. I'm all set on my end.
Great. So that's unanimous. So I guess that concludes our review of the supplemental budget proposals having to do with the taxation committee. We're going to meet again on Thursday morning at 9 o'clock. Are we doing an expedited review on Thursday, Julie, or is that am I correct on that?
For on next week on the 26th, yes. That's what's currently scheduled.
Tax expenditure review on Thursday.
I'm sorry, I was just looking at my calendar and I noticed a mistake, but yes, you currently have, for this Thursday, you currently have scheduled the tax expenditure review of the expedited review provisions for this current cycle. I've talked to Opega, and who comes to do the presentation of their report, and they are willing to be flexible. So to the extent that you may need to, well, will need to put in some more time for budget discussions and considerations, we can be flexible in terms of other things that are scheduled. The schedule for next week is also somewhat flexible in that we scheduled the possibility of tax expenditure review because there are several reports and issues that need to be dealt with, and we couldn't schedule bills for public hearing until the week of February 8th because they require 2 weekends notice. The report back to AFA wants your report back on the budget by supplemental budget by the 5th, next Friday.
Well, how long do you think the tax expenditure review would take for Thursday?
It depends on how many questions you ask. It probably wouldn't, certainly not more than a couple of hours. It might not take that long. I mean, even just to explain what it is, as long as you're not going to be essentially working it at that point, I don't think it would take longer probably than an hour and a half, 2 hours.
So given that, Representative Terry, since we're meeting at 9 o'clock, do you think we'd have time for more work on the budget items, or should we wait till next week and spend a bunch of time on Tuesday and Thursday so that we can get that done by the 5th?
I think it would be beneficial if we started it now, especially if Opega is willing to be flexible. So my suggestion is we dedicate Thursday to having this discussion, to diving deeper into the tabled issues. If we need Tuesday as well to do that, we can take it, assuming OPEGA is still flexible, which it sounds like they are. But if we can get it done, the sooner the better. I know that the Appropriations Committee is very anxious to get everybody's reports in so they can make their recommendations and vote on all of the things they need to vote on. So yeah, my recommendation would be to work on this exclusively on Thursday and perhaps put OPEGA off until Tuesday.
Yeah, so why don't we take tax expenditure review off our calendar for Thursday and plan to meet at 9 o'clock and pick back up where we've left off with these tabled items around conformity in the budget. So we'll spend Thursday morning just working on that and diving into it a little bit deeper and getting questions answered and making any changes we want to recommend and voting on those if we're ready to vote. But that sounds good. So let's go with that.
Mr. Chair?
Yep, Representative Krajicek.
Yeah, will we have the figures by Thursday for the items that we asked for today? How much additional tax dollars for each of the conformity items?
Mr. D'Alessandro and or Dr. Allen, do you think we could have that information by Thursday?
We will try to have that information for the committee on Thursday morning, even if it's a range or a rough estimate.
Thank you, Dr. Allen.
That sounds good.
Representative Sachs, you have a question?
Yes, please. And again, this may be my learning curve, but is there a person, whether it's Dr. Allen or, I'm sorry, Mr. D'Alessandro, I've asked you a lot of questions today, but is there one place that I should be as I'm going through and trying to get my questions together to understand some things for Thursday? Is there a place or a person that I should direct those to?
Yeah, you can probably start with myself or Senator Chipman and or Julie, and we can direct you to the right person or actually get those questions answered for you.
Do you have an additional question?
I have one additional thing I should probably add. I did get an email while your discussions were ongoing from Kate Dufour at Maine Municipal Association, because there had been a question, just to clarify that Maine Municipal Association does support the revenue sharing provisions that are in the supplemental budget.
Yeah. We'll work on making sure that documents are that we get the documents that we need. You know, I don't know, maybe we'll come up with our own system. So we all have going into meetings, so it'll be a little easier for us to access those. So we don't have to rely on poor Julie to pull everything up every single time.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. And just for Thursday, I think, you know, we'll appreciate any information we can get from Maine Revenue Services. If there are some of those items where we don't have enough information, you know, members aren't comfortable voting on that day, you know, I think we've got till the end of next week to vote. So we could certainly set aside any items where we don't have enough information, we're not comfortable. I want to make sure that we all have the information we need so we can make the best decisions possible. But I know they're going to work on getting the information for us that we've asked for, and we appreciate their work on that. Anything else anybody would like to discuss? Do you have anything else, Representative Terry?
Just a quick question for Julie, I guess, is, you know, if we do take this up until next Thursday, will that give you enough time to get everything that we need to AFA by Friday? Or should we shoot for getting this done until, if possible anyway, on Tuesday of next week?
I think that there would be time if you don't reach all of your final decisions until Thursday. I mean, you've already decided on some of the provisions that are in there. That I now understand the conformity is the big issue, which is going to require a lot of discussion and work on your part. I'm not sure how, I mean, it sort of depends on what your recommendations end up being and how many of them there are. More than two might be difficult to get everything prepared in order to get it to AFA on Friday, but assuming there aren't more than two recommendations, it should be okay. If there are going to be more than two, then I don't need much sleep.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you. I think going forward, if everybody has, you know, a timeline in their head on how we get things done, that would be great. Representative Matlack, you have a question?
Yeah, I actually do for Ms. Trundy from DAPS. Is that Friday, February, is it February 5th? Is that still the deadline for AFA, or do we? Because
Yes,
I
to the best of my knowledge, it is, yes.
okay. For tax or for everybody?
For everybody.
For everybody.
It's for, yeah, and there hasn't been any change. I would let you know if there had been, but there hasn't been.
I mean, I think if we work on this
Okay.
Thursday and all day Tuesday morning if we need to, and again Thursday, it seems like we should be able to get through the remaining items that we haven't voted on that we tabled today, you know, with three more days, you know, that we could work on it. But we'll just have to see where things go. Not seeing any other concerns, questions, or anything like that. So are we ready to adjourn for today?
Make a motion to adjourn.
A motion from Representative Kryzak to adjourn.
Second.
Seconded by Representative Collins, I guess. All those in favor? Has everybody voted?
Looks like it.
Yep.
All right, that's unanimous. So we are now adjourned. We'll see
Have
everyone.
a great day, everybody.